You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Good evening, guys, gals, and pals. It is once again time for This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs. I'm Hobbs. Ben is in the background taking care of some flooding in his basement. So tonight it's just going to be me and my guest, Mike Shelby of Forward Observer and Early Warning Network and a whole bunch of other places. Mike, why don't you just tell everybody who you are in case they've been living under a rock?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. Good to see you again. And I'm a former Intel guy, and we've we've spun off a couple of things. Uh, we're Ford Observer. All right, if you ever heard of that, uh, we're an Intel company. How about that?
All right, sounds good to me.
Can you
Keep it
can you
short
hear
and
me all
sweet.
right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. There's no background noises, and I think that we'll do just fine. So before we get into kind of jumping on the list of stuff that I sent you and going over things in the news, you also do something called the Early Warning Network that you do about a half an hour to an hour breakdown of current events and stuff that are not necessarily the stuff that you'd find browsing through CNN or Fox News. A lot more geopolitical, strategic type stuff, things that people who are in the preparedness space might get a lot more use out of than your bog stock uh, talking head on the news. That's over at Early Warning Network on YouTube. I've been listening to that in the afternoons when I go to work, and it's definitely worth listening to. And you can go
Yeah,
to
thanks.
any. Yep, you can go to Mike's various websites and get yourself a subscription. And I've been subscribed for quite a while, and it is worth every penny.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And I got my dog. Uh, so yeah, before we jump into the list of news stuff, I was just doom scrolling through Twitter here, and there seems to be a bit of a disturbance out in your neck of the woods. There's some Free Palestine protesters making a mess of downtown Austin. What's all that about, or is that just business as usual in A Town?
There was like a big weekend this weekend. We're tracking 162 protests, I think, nationwide, which is actually not close to a record. But yeah, it's like a big Palestine thing. I'm If it's happening in downtown Austin, I'm completely unaware and unplugged. But I don't know. I'm not surprised. Pretty par for the course, I think.
That's kind of what I figured. It seems that Austin is kind of like South Central California. Just kind of the transplants go there to get away from California and then bring every bit of their terrible politics with them. Um, so
Yeah, it's not as bad as Portland, but it's definitely the Portland of Texas.
that's a good way of putting it. So I sent a list of some stuff that I just jotted down throughout the week, and the one that I think I should probably jump into first because it will be the easiest one and the fastest one to get through is the one that just happened yesterday, or maybe day before yesterday, and that's the big beautiful bill passed through the House, and as part of that, the Hearing Protection Act has passed through the House and is moving on to the Senate as a part of reconciliation and in its entirety. In the beginning, they amended it to rather than strike suppressors off of the NFA entirely, the amended form of the HPA was going to merely strike the $200 tax and leave the registration in place. And thanks to a whole lot of people getting on social media and blowing up the Capitol switchboard, they realized that the $200 part wasn't the barrier to entry for most people. It was the
Yeah.
it was the paperwork and the registration that people have a problem with. So they, in reconciliation, they amended the HPA back to its original form. If it passes the Senate and big beautiful bill goes to the president's desk and signed off on it, that means that suppressors will be regulated exactly the same as any other firearm, and they will be a simple go into your gun store, fill out your 4473, get your background check, cash and carry out the door. which is good news. It's a great news.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Another bill that was potentially going to be added in by the Senate was going to be the Short Act, which would do essentially the same thing for short barreled rifles, short barreled shotguns, and AOWs, which would mean that the NFA would be a strictly machine gun registry from here on out. And that's just one more leg to knock out from under the table. So, before we move on to things, what do you have to say about that?
Well, it's got to get through the Senate, but bravo. I mean, it's a long time coming, and I think it's is it Firearms Policy Coalition and a couple other groups. I don't know. I give them like my $30 a month or whatever it is, and I just if they're able to push stuff, lobby and push stuff like that through. I mean, they deserve our support. Uh, I guess I don't really have anything smart to say on it other than congratulations.
Yep, I think GOA was doing
Hmm.
the majority of the legwork on this one.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Gun Owners of America. This was mainly pushed by Rep. Clyde of Georgia was the one that was heading this up, and he got it through. And good on him. I cannot wait for cheap and available suppressors after the demand clears off shelves for the next 2 years. You know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the thing that kind of I don't know, it intrigues me about it, and it's a question that I haven't heard answered yet. Is if suppressors are going to be regulated the same as just any regular firearm, what does that mean for the potentiality of an 80% suppressor kit shipped straight to your
Hmm.
door? The same way we have AR-15 and Glock lower receivers and 80% receivers of any kind. As a machinist myself, an 80% suppressor kit that's of better quality than a solvent trap or a inline fuel filter is very appealing to me, if that's the case. So
Yeah, I don't know. I'm completely out of my element. I'm at this point. If it if it goes Pew, I bought just about anything until we get plasma rifles. I've pretty much bought all the guns and accoutrements I'll ever need. Unfortunately, but so yeah, I don't keep up with a lot of that stuff anymore. But that is um, an interesting prospect. I know a lot of guys. What is it? You can form one your own can. I
yeah,
know a bunch of guys who are doing that stuff, and it's how easy is that going to be? I think it's great either way.
yeah, be fantastic. So moving from the good news for gun rights, we can go straight into what's probably the biggest story of the week, and that was Joe Biden's prostate cancer that just suddenly cropped up at stage 4, metastasized to the bone. That nobody, not like the president has the best health care in the world, and they do oopsie poopsie, we missed this one. Yeah, I don't believe it, and the timing of it. Jake Tapper's novel coming out, making it seem like everybody knew he was non-compos mentis, and they dropped this "he's got prostate cancer" bomb so that anybody that's going to be criticizing him, oh, you're criticizing a sick old man, leave him alone. And I don't buy it, and apparently that seems to be the consensus.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought it was funny. The Biden staffers, whoever's left, they were coming out and saying, "Oh, Biden's on some tour to like publicity thing to improve his legacy." And I thought, "Oh, well, that's strange." Like, I didn't say this, and of course, I wouldn't like predict anything like this, but I'll tell you, you get to Biden's age and mental status, and it's like, you know, old men with nothing to do, they don't last long. It's like the guy that retires at 75 and he dies at 75 and a half. He's got nothing to do all day. He's got no purpose, like no, you know, and they go fast. So I think that's kind of what I expected. I remember one day thinking like, yeah, maybe I'll give him like 6 months, maybe a year, until he gets that office. So apparently, maybe not accurate, but not too far off.
Yeah, if it's stage 4 and it's metastasized to the bone, he's had it for a long time. That seems to be what every oncologist that the mainstream media has been interviewing has said. If they're saying like if it's like a super aggressive form, then 2 years is plausible, but the majority of time, this is a 4 to 10 year disease to advance to the stage that it's at right now. So the
Mhm.
possibility of him having this throughout his entire presidency and maybe even part of his vice presidency under Obama is actually quite real. And the fact that they not only felt that they could get him across the finish line, but then complete a term and then try to run for a second term is, I don't know whether it's hubris or it's elder abuse or both. It could be both. It's sick either way.
Yeah, it's nuts that this guy was going to run again, knowing that he had cancer. I mean, yeah, I saw that many physicians come out and say they had to have known. The White House physician had to have known. I mean, you you think that with probably the best medical care on planet Earth, you think that they would have known? Yeah, I think it is. I think it to say it's hubris is definitely an understatement. And I don't know. At some point, I don't know how criminal it could be, but if the president has cancer, it seems like that's something that maybe people should know about when before they go try to vote for him again.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen one conspiracy theory saying that they knew he was sick. They were going to put him in. They were going to expecting him to die in his first term. Kamala Harris would get seated as the first woman of color president in
Right.
U.S. history, and but he kept hanging on, because they knew they couldn't get Kamala across the finish line, even with a full 1 or 2 year campaign. I think that her 120 something day campaign that she had was more of an asset in her column than a lot of people give credit for, because the more you see Kamala Harris, the less likable she gets.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, Biden held on and completed his term, and then he had to drop out of the race. And now it looks like he's not going to be with us for too much longer. Can't say that I'm happy, because that's kind of a sick thing, but I can't say that I'm sad either.
I'm not going to cry for him. Yeah, I saw a lot of people, kind of cucking on Twitter, being like, "Oh, whatever you think of this guy, like you shouldn't be." This guy did so much to take our country backwards and
Yeah.
add to the instability. I I'm not going to shed a tear. I'm not going to put balloons out in front of my house, but I'm not going to be sad about it, and maybe I'll even be somewhat relieved.
Yeah, and maybe that was part of the plan. Some people that I've listened to have said that he did a lot of the things in his presidency that Obama wished he could have got away with doing. Maybe Biden was like, "Yeah, I'm dying. I'm going to do all of this terrible stuff, and
Mm,
it's not
right.
going to be my problem anymore for very long." So, or maybe he was just so conked out of his mind. The auto pen thing adds another layer to just how corrupt and, like, who's running our country right now. And there's been three people named by Ed Martin, who was going
Mm,
to be the prosecutor for DC, but I think he said, like, Ron Klain and a couple of other, like, big time Biden, Obama, Clinton insiders were the ones that were running the auto pen. There's allegations that they were selling pardons and were basically using the auto pen's executive, the power to issue executive orders, and doing it for the highest bidder. So if that comes out, I mean, there's no telling what actions were taken under that administration that are going to be overturned, and it's going to be very interesting, and it is, to the best of my knowledge, some uncharted waters as far as this country goes.
yeah, I don't know, man. I think the track record for the Trump administration for nothing ever happening is pretty good so far. So uh, maybe nothing will actually happen. Maybe they'll just say, "Yeah, he shouldn't have done this," but we're going to look towards the future. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever.
That seems to be the status quo for every single political scandal that has happened in the last 50 years. It happens. We know it happens. People talk about it happening. It gets denied and denied and denied. And then the proof comes out, and everybody that was saying it was happening is like, here's the proof. So what's going to happen? And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, you're right. There's the proof for it. Anyways, moving on. And
Yeah,
that,
right.
that's the thing that people get so frustrated with. is the fact that all of this bad stuff seems to happen and nothing happens to the people who did it, because we had the too big to fail in the banking crisis, and these people are too big to jail. Like they get away with everything, and people are beyond the point of finding the proof. We know it happened. Having the proof is nice. Now we need to get to the punishment phase. So, moving on from that little bit of a black pill, and next thing on the list, wouldn't you know, another instance of something bad happens and nothing ever happens is Dan Bongino and Kash Patel double down on Jeffrey Epstein killed himself and the Butler shooter acted alone. So this was very disappointing to see, but I think I've got an explanation, at least for the Epstein part. Okay, so they say that Epstein killed himself. There's a lot of forensic evidence that says that it either wasn't possible or it would have happened under some extremely dubious circumstances. So what I think happened is, let's backtrack for just a second. During the interview with Maria Bartiromo, Cash and Dan were, they're in their element. They're talking. They got a friendly interviewer. They're, all smiles and laughs until she brings up Epstein, and then things like a
Yeah.
pallor comes over them. They get very, very, very uncomfortable because they know that they are about to say something that people are not going to like or people are not going to believe. So what I think happens is Epstein gets pinched, goes to the jail, and it's either an understanding ahead of time or a message gets to him, like probably through his lawyer or something, to where he's told, Jeff, your secrets are going to die with you. And it can go one of two ways. It can go the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is we facilitate it so that you can take your own life. We'll make sure that you have a blanket in your cell that's capable of supporting your weight. We'll make sure that the cameras are off. We'll make sure that your cellmate is out. We'll make sure that the guards fall asleep. We'll do everything. All you have to do is just take the long drop, okay? The other way is the hard way. And if we have to be inconvenienced to take you out, it's going to be the most painful and torturous moments of your entire life. So the ball's in your court, Jeff. So when Dan and Cash are up there very uncomfortably saying that Epstein killed himself, they're not technically lying. He did kill himself, but they're saying it. They know that what they're saying is a very squishy and bullshitty kind of way to say that he killed himself. So that's what I think happened. They're not technically lying, but they're kind of lying.
Yeah, I don't know. If the guy just hung himself with his blanket, that's one thing. But you know, we go back to the cameras being off, and I don't know. I tend to simplify as much as possible any conspiracy theory that I entertain. However, uh, I don't know, man. I don't have an opinion on it. I don't know enough about it. But Epstein didn't kill himself is still a fantastic meme.
It really is. And if you ask anybody around, probably 75% of the American public believe that that's the case. And um, I would like to believe in the honesty of Bongino and Patel. And if what I think is true, it's a really shitty way of going about doing things, but it does kind of make sense to me because there were just so many dominoes. He was supposed to have a cellmate. The guards were supposed to make half-hourly rounds. There's supposed to be a security camera. He's not supposed to have a blanket in his cell. Just all of this stuff that compounds makes it feel like it was at the very least facilitated that he could do that to himself. So, you know. And
Yeah, it's too. Yeah, it's kind of too clean. We know Epstein was a really messy guy. They talked about all of his intelligence ties. I mean, you can go into Ghislaine Maxwell and her ties to everything, and then it's like you actually go just beneath the surface and you see how messy it is. And so Epstein just simply hanging himself is a little too clean for me. But
Yeah.
again, I don't know what I'm talking about. So
Well, it's good that you brought up the Maxwell connection, because it's my opinion that people focus too much on Epstein's involvement in all of this and just kind of sideline Maxwell. And it's my opinion that it was actually Maxwell was the legacy operator, because you look at who her father was, Robert Maxwell. He was like a triple agent for the CIA, the Mossad, and the KGB. Or no, not CIA, MI6, Mossad, and the KGB. He was a newspaper editor that did a lot of propaganda stuff in the UK. I mean, the family legacy that goes on from him to his daughter, and he died under suspicious circumstances as well. So the type of institutional knowledge that he could have passed on to his daughter, I think that seeing where she came from as compared to where Epstein came from, he was like a math teacher teaching AP math at some university or
yeah,
something in New York, and then just like out of nowhere, he gets this financier position. He buys Les Wexner's $20 million brownstone in New York for $1, and then suddenly he's like, high society, everywhere. So that to me is not a guy who came into the business of blackmail that he was in. He was installed as a cover for the actual asset, which was Ghislaine Maxwell, which is why he's dead and she's sitting pretty in a cell somewhere.
yeah. We still don't have the Epstein docs, do we? The Epstein list in their entirety.
Nope, nothing ever happens.
So yeah, you're telling me Pam, well, not you, but people who said Pam Bondi's going to go after Ron Klain and all these Biden apparatchiks, but she can't. She a month ago she said, "Oh, I've got the Epstein list on my desk." Okay,
Apparently not.
all right, thanks.
Yeah, she was
Yeah,
caught on a
nothing.
hot she was caught on a hot mic with a Project Veritas, or not Project Veritas, but O'Keefe's new outlet, OMG.
OMG.
Yeah, telling just like some woman that I think that she was there interviewing for like a nanny job or something. Like, and the undercover nanny asked her like what's the deal with this Epstein stuff, and she was like, there's so much. Like, it's more than I ever thought that there was. Like, we're trying to redact these, faces and blur out. She's like, it's basically child porn. She's like, there's just
Wow.
so much of it. And so, that to me is kind of an excuse. It's not a good excuse, but it's an excuse for why this is taking so long. We'll have to just wait and see how all of that plays out, I guess. I'm sick of waiting, but who isn't?
Well, releasing the list is great, but what about the people who committed all those crimes?
Yeah.
That you want to talk about justice is not releasing the list. Justice is going after the violators.
Yep. That is exactly right. Like we said just a little bit ago, people are beyond the proof finding stage. We are at the demands for punishment phase. So, yeah. Uh
Can I just say something real quick?
yeah.
I use ChatGPT every day, and one of the things I kind of argue with it. I'll write this long thing and I'll post it in there and I'll say, tell me where I'm wrong or poke holes in it or what am I missing? And the other day we were talking about. I say we were talking. I don't even know how the whole AI stuff works, but all I know is I type a few sentences in there and it gives me its response. So it's like chatting, with intelligence. And so, and we're talking about the legitimacy crisis for the federal government. And I didn't bring this up, but I should have. It was basically telling me how the overlooked legitimacy crisis is not just at the federal government, but it's also at the state level, because all these
Yep.
state governments are also not fulfilling their obligations and going after the wrong criminals or not going after the right criminals, et cetera, et cetera. So at any rate, this is extremely delegitimizing for me. If the DOJ cannot, I mean, apparently everyone knows about this stuff. And there's so many witnesses, and there's so many official records, and so many victims coming forward. If the DOJ can't deliver justice here, we need one that can. And the problem is, what do you do when you have an institution that's not doing its job? At any rate, I don't mean to digress, but it was just funny. I kind of had this conversation with ChatGPT the other day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago we were having the discussion on this. Like, if Pam Bondi was telling the truth when she was talking to the undercover nanny, that there's just so much of it, and they have to blur out faces, blur out child nudity, and anything else like that. You know, what they need to do, rather than just working on it as one whole swath, is you need to identify the perpetrators in all of this. That should be priority number one. And then you need to segregate it out. It's like put all of suspect A into one pile and get to work on suspect A and only suspect A. And do any of the redactions and the blurring that you need to do on suspect A while you go out and find suspect A and throw him in a hole. And then when you're done, you now have all of your tidied up evidence that you can give to the discovery process in court. And now suddenly suspect A is going to be buried under a prison somewhere. Meanwhile, suspect B, C, D, etc. is, in order to make so that, if they know that I'm in this pile of evidence too, to make sure they're not fleeing somewhere. When you go out to get suspect A, you tell B, C, D, etc. You have a flight risk order. You are no longer allowed to go anywhere, and we'll get to you in due time.
Ankle
That way,
monitor. Yep.
yeah, ankle monitors or whatever it is. It's like, we're building a case against you. You're not going anywhere. You will get your due justice coming soon. We're working on suspect A right now. You'll get your turn. What this does is it means that the victims get their justice, and the American public will see that you're actually doing something. You're not just flapping your gums.
We've got a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of gum flapping. Let's see. I wrote down another one here. I don't know how much we can get into it. It was just a Hillary Clinton giving like a town hall speech or something. Said that she's very taken aback by people like Elon Musk and JD Vance saying that Americans need to have more babies. And she's like, that's what we have immigrants for. And it's like, I thought that replacement migration was a terrible racist right-wing conspiracy theory. And now Hill Dog is out here advocating for it. So, I mean, just one of those saying the quiet parts out loud moments. We don't really have to dig too much into that unless you got something to add to it.
I thank God she's not president, or she was not elected. We'd probably be in prison right now.
Probably. And that's not an exaggeration. They want to talk about Trump and all the things that he's doing, getting actual criminals off the streets and out of the country. And, we were, this close to being wrong-think criminals. So the other thing that was kind of a flash in the pan over the news cycle was the anti-natalist bombing of an IVF clinic in Palm Springs, California. Now, this is one of those weird left-wing terrorism incidents that's kind of up your alley in what you do. So
Mm-hmm.
I read a little bit about what this guy was on. It seems like he's just an absolute nutter that is the personification of left-wing thought taken to its natural extreme, where everything has to be consent-based. Like, my existence, I did not consent to my existence.
Yeah.
It's... Yeah, so
then the guy can just kill himself if he doesn't want to be here.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't have to try to kill other people or destroy something.
Luckily, apparently he was the only fatality in the entire exchange. He blew himself up in his car. I think 4 people suffered some injuries, and miraculously, none of the frozen embryos at the IVF clinic were damaged in any way.
Yeah.
So, good job, showing the competency of left wing terrorists.
You know, I didn't follow up on this, and I will now that I'll do it on tomorrow or Monday. But you know, he had that vehicle borne IED, and I saw some people say, "Oh, that's just not something you can go build," and he had to have had some help, and there had to have been someone else involved. I'm I don't believe that to be the case. I actually don't believe that at all. There are plenty of bomb making guides. I mean, I like 2 months ago, I talked about one that was put up on one of these far left Antifa blogs. So, um, I didn't even see like what kind of explosive it was or what. I'm not saying he didn't have any help, but there are a lot. I mean, there are a lot of guides online, and with some in your garage or a big enough backyard, you know, you could kind of test proof, you know, what test proof the instructions. But again, you know, I didn't see like how advanced or complex this his homemade explosives or whatever he had. I didn't see how bad that was. Did you?
I didn't see anything about the composition of it. I saw some pictures from like a news crew that was taking footage of it, and it looked like it was more of an incendiary device than an actual
Oh,
true
okay,
explosive.
gotcha.
So if I had to guess, I'd say he probably just had some type of a crude detonator in flammable like gasoline or something, and he drove his car through the front of this building and touched off his payload.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you need a spark or a match to do that. Then
Yeah.
not necessarily a blasting cap or some other kind of detonator.
Yeah. So we'll just have to keep an eye on whether or not more things of this vein are going to be coming through. But the thing that's probably the most interesting from the media narrative perspective is for about 5 minutes before people identified who the bomber
Yeah,
was, the chatter was that this was some radical Catholic white nationalist or something, probably that thinks that IVF is a sin against God, and so he was gonna. And then it's like, oh, it was actually some Reddit loser that hated his life and hated his mom and dad for giving birth to him because he couldn't consent to his own existence, as if that makes a shred of fucking sense.
yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, we'll just have to keep our eyes open to see if there's any more of this nonsense that takes place in the future. Uh, So aside from Joe Biden's ass cancer, probably the story that got the most media coverage and media spin was the ambush. Ooh, the ambush of the South African president Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office. Uh, so after the Zelensky thing, and now with Cyril Ramaphosa's appearance in the Oval Office and what happened to him, the Oval Office is now the Thunderdome, and Trump is Master Blaster.
Yeah. Well, actually, Master Blaster gets defeated. Remember,
Oh
because
yeah,
doesn't he throw sand in the guy's eyes or something? So he's like Mel Gibson, whoever
yeah.
the road
Ma-
warrior. We don't even know his name. He's just the road warrior.
Max,
Oh, Max, I guess that's his name,
yeah,
huh? Yeah.
it's like some Polish like Max Radatowski or something like that. But anyways, yeah. So that happened. South African president shows up expecting to talk trade and maybe some foreign aid or whatever, and then Trump does the classroom when the teacher has a hangover and rolls the TV in on the cart and starts playing videos of Julius Malema running his fucking mouth. And the media spin was immediate. Like you can go on Western Lensman's Twitter profile and you can find the compilation of ambush, 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 ambush. Like that was the AP approved talking point, was Trump ambushes the South African president in the Oval Office. And the amount of cope that I saw, at first the headlines were uh, Trump pushes on false narrative of white genocide, and those were very, very quickly updated to baseless. And because they know that if they called it false, when you can watch a 4-minute video of of Julius Malema, who is the head of the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, which is like the second largest party in South Africa. They have 39 seats in the South African parliament. When he's out there with a packed stadium, standing room only, of people chanting, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," brrr, pa, it's kind of hard to say that these claims are false, because this is a government official with seats in parliament saying this. So even then, calling them baseless claims is kind of a shitty move. But so they started picking like little nitpicks, like, oh, those white crosses that were along the side of the road, those aren't graves, those are memorial markers. It's like he never said they were graves. It's like
Yeah.
just yellow
Right.
journalism, right? And then I think, like, after the presentation was done, the first question was from NBC News, where they asked him about that jet from Qatar, and he's like, "It's like, what does this jet have to do with what we just watched? Here, NBC, you're fake news. Get out!" And so he kicked NBC News out of the Oval Office, which, good, you deserve it. So to me, this is Trump taking the old school communist tactic of the struggle session and flipping it on its head. Because that's essentially what this was. Whereas the struggle session was to get you to admit to something that you didn't do, this was getting the South African government to admit to something that they are doing.
Yeah, on camera where there can be accountability and a reaction. Yeah, I saw that too. And I think the biggest thing is, a lot of these news outlets said, well, there are no mass graves. This is not like it's not like a traditional genocide where the government's going village to village and just like
Yeah.
man, woman, and child, dump them in a mass grave. And it is not like that. And I even saw where some of usual characters said, well, the white populace of the South Africa is like 7 or 8%, and they are only 1% of those being murdered. So whatever. And the problem is not it's not just the whites in general; it's the white farmers, which are a much smaller. And I didn't do the math, but I just saw somewhere. I saw it on the internet, so it has to be right.
Yeah.
It's like white farmers are like 1,500% overrepresented in
Yep.
the amount of murders or something like that. And the thing that all these outlets miss is, yeah, sure, there's opportunistic violence and opportunistic murder, and robbery's gone wrong, or just hey, you're in a rival gang or whatever, and we're gonna murder you. Okay, yeah, sure, they do that to each other all the time, just like most of the countries over there. But the what they didn't point out is how horrific these murders are of the white farmers, and just how brutal and sadistic they are. Um, I'm sure there are Black South Africans who are being brutally murdered, but nothing to the level of trying to cause added psychological harm. I mean, this really is. These people feel like they're getting their retribution by killing white farmers, and that's what all the major media outlets miss. Is it's not just that they are being murdered; it is that they are being murdered in a very different way than the rest of the murders that are taking place in South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a buzzword floating around about 3 or maybe 4 years ago. It was on every media talking head's lips for a few weeks, and that was stochastic terrorism. They were
Yeah.
trying to attribute the idea of stochastic terrorism to something that was explicitly done by the Trump administration and the people who follow him. And when Trump gets up there and says that the South American countries are sending us their worst people, in the minds of them, that, oh, Trump is putting that little earbug in people's heads to go out and kill Mexicans or something like that, right? And then
Mhm.
that's not what it is at all. But what's going on in South Africa is you're right, it doesn't fit the template of your traditional round them up and shoot them in front of a ditch genocide. But what it is you have powerful and influential government officials initiating stochastic terrorism that is telling people with a racial grievance in South Africa that, hey, it's okay to go out there and do these heinous crimes because those people represent the oppressor class. This is one part stochastic terrorism, one part communist communist class struggle, and it's like you said, it's causing. I saw the same statistic that you saw, where it's like white farmers represent 0.06% of the population and are overrepresented by like 1,500% as far as the murder goes. And again, I didn't check the numbers either, but it was on the internet, so it must be true. Um, but yeah, it's like it's a botched robbery is one thing, but coming with a large group of people in the middle of the night to a farm in the middle of nowhere and like nailing the wife's hands and feet to the floor while you put the baby in a pot of boiling water and make her watch it,
Yeah.
and then shoot her husband in front of her and like do all of these like just absolutely heinous things, is not just a botched robbery. This is something that
Right.
is motivated by hatred, by a desire to get some type of retribution for a perceived slight in the past.
Yeah, and it's not just breaking into a home. It's like getting over the electric fence and breaking through the gate and then breaking through the front door and then breaking through the internal gates inside the home
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, this is not just like, hey, we're gonna go knock off a house, like you said. Yeah, it is. I don't know. I At least egregious. It's really it makes me angry, and I get the sentiment where people say, well, that's not our fight because our fight's here at home. We've got enough turds to deal with here at home, which I completely agree with. But at a certain level, it is also in a world where, in a just world, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't have been uh, doing some of these military escapades all around the world. Maybe we would have been, defending people with whom maybe we have some shared interest. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, in a perfect world, it would make a lot more sense. And we talked about it last week, why the introduction of the 60, the whole 60 people that Trump brought in from South Africa, why this has made the lefties so up in arms. And it's
Oh yeah,
not, I mean, it like on a surface level, it's because they're white, but that's enough for your typical low IQ, blue haired, free Palestine activist or whatever. The U.S. government can't help white people. White people are privileged. Blah blah blah. But at an upper level, when you're talking about the movers and shakers of of what goes on in the upper levels of politics and everything, what scares it the most is the contrast of a good example, because for years we've been bringing in, intentionally allowing in, human traffickers, drug dealers, criminals, gang members, and people have sort of desensitized themselves to the fact that that is abnormal. They have allowed themselves to believe that if you bring in refugees from crime or war torn parts of the world, you are going to get people that are maladjusted to the American Western way of life.
yeah,
That is the standard that the people in power want us to have in our minds, because they operate under the paradigm of the Cloward Piven model. They're trying to burn things down. And when you bring in 60 intact families, husbands, wives, and kids, that will probably be off of any government assistance within 3 months and probably be landowners within a decade, and just start doing what they were doing in their home countries again and contributing to the American way of life, then it makes people notice that this is the type of person we should be bringing in. This is what a refugee is: somebody who's happy and uh, thankful to be here, to be allowed to come to this country. Not these people over here. Why are we allowing these people to come here? They have no gratitude, and they are burning things down and being a nuisance when we could have these type of people over here. And so that's what I think scares the people in the upper echelons of power the most.
One thing I was just thinking, what we brought over, 50,000 or something like that in this batch from South Africa, 50,000 refugees
No, 60.
or 60,000. Okay, well I
No,
knew it was
not
somewhere around there.
no. 60. Six
Oh,
zero.
60. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Well,
That's
how did we get all that 50,000 number?
I don't Yeah, I heard people on the internet talking about 8,000, 50,000. No, it was 60. Actually, it's 59.
Wow.
59 total. That's it. And they're making this big of a deal about it.
Yeah, yeah. I saw the headlines. I didn't even actually look into it, but yeah, I don't know. Probably about 10 years ago, there was a guy that came to visit Central Texas, and he was South African. His name was, I believe, it was Dion, and I talked to him uh, one night, and I said, why do these people just not leave? I mean, realistically. And he said, it's their land. Like they're multi generation. They feel tied to the land. They feel like it's their country and their land, and they don't leave, which I can have some respect for. And if I were in their shoes, uh, it'd be tough to have a wife and daughter, wife and kids, continue to live there, knowing the risk. But the other side is, well, I'm a man, and this is my land, and uh, so I don't know. It's got to be difficult for some of these people to actually leave, though. Which you just suppose that against other people trying to claim refugee status or trying to claim asylum. It's like, oh, I fear for my life because I live in a war torn country, and it's like, how, I don't know. I think there's something to be said for the people that say, I could go to the States and from South Africa, I could go apply for refugee or asylum status, but I won't because I'm going to defend my country against these people versus all these military age males who are leaving their country instead of trying to do their part to save their own country. In fact, do I really want those people coming into my country if they're not willing to defend theirs? And the answer is no, obviously.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, we kind of burned through the list of stuff that I got through tonight. Is there anything that's on your mind that's really standing out to you that you'd like the audience to know about?
Uh, just keep doing your area study. This the guy that killed these two Jewish people in D.C.
Yeah.
I guess they're Israeli embassy staffers. Okay, well, he was a member of a political party that I've talked about for several years called PSL. Actually, going back to like 2019 and 2020, Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is a far left political party. They're like a regional party, primarily. I know they're in Seattle. They're in like a couple other places where you would like expect far left parties. But when you do your area study, be sure to look out for groups like that. Not just PSL, but Democratic Socialists of America, and a lot of the activist groups, especially the pro-Palestine activist groups, because if after Luigi Mangione, I looked at that and I said, this is sporadic. This is probably a moment, not a movement. And then and now months, however long later, we have a separate, similar tactic but a different cause
Hmm.
here with the pro-Palestine movement. This is something that they've been pushing for a while, is escalation. And one of their big things that is just plastered over all of one of their big strategic messages is bring the war home, meaning, meaning you go prosecute the war for Palestinian liberation here in the United States, with the implication or maybe implying whatever that looks like. And so, if this does catch on, if the pro-Palestine element, first of all, these people, they actually are revolutionary. I read their blogs every morning, and I'm on their social media and looking into all this stuff, and they are classically revolutionary, but they don't have enough support to actually to foment a revolution. I think it's like last time I looked, like 16% or something like that of Americans uh, sympathize with the plight of Palestinians, and you just can't build a revolutionary movement around 16% of a country.
Hmm.
or not one that's going to be sustained. So this means that if uh, just without going like too much into detail, but when you look at the phases of a revolution, they're going to get stuck in the terror phase because they don't have enough popular support, they don't have enough numbers, they don't have the capability to actually foment an armed revolution if that is what they were trying to uh, achieve. Because they cannot advance to that phase, they're going to get stuck in the terror phase. So I actually can see a case where we do see more types of this stuff, and it's not just protests and it's not just arson. Maybe it is armed political violence, and then you get into, well, is this going to be uh, individualistic, like individual autonomous violence, or organized political violence? Autonomous political violence is you have like one individual or maybe a small group of individuals. They're not like connected to, there's not like any command and control. There's no authority. There's no directives. They're not being directed to go do this stuff. They just say, hey, we're going to go here and we're going to try to kill someone that we believe is responsible or a good, really symbolic target or maybe a strategic target. And then there's organized political violence. I doubt they get to the organized political violence, like playing team sports. I think it's going to be autonomous, it's going to be sporadic, and I call it geographically flexible. Like it could happen anywhere. There's no real center of gravity. It's not like you can cut the head off a snake. It's an
Yeah.
autonomous movement. So I think for the people, I don't know, I guess there's some people that think this is going to be like an organized armed revolution. I don't see it happening. It's going to be autonomous, relatively low level, but it could become more frequent in the rest of this year, especially because Israel has this operate. Is it Gideon's chariots? I think it's called. They're like they're clearing out the Gaza Strip. They're going to basically, I think, annex it, take it over, and kick. I think they've already kicked the Palestinians out or trying to. So at any rate, that's do your area study. Look out for these groups and just be aware if you do have these groups in your area. Make note of that, and I don't know, maybe pay attention to what they're saying.
Yeah, so you said that with a popular support of 16% or so, you don't see them getting past the terror phase where they're doing just like small, isolated terror acts like the Luigi Mangione shooting or this guy that took out the two embassy employees. Um, so
Well,
seeing as how
yeah.
seeing as how that sort of stuff typically sours public perception to a wider base, how long can a sort of decentralized, traditionally kind of sort of like a decentralized lone wolf type network like this stay in the terror phase?
Well, yeah, so that 16% is nationally. So you
Yeah.
may have some areas where it's maybe 25 or 30 or more percent. And I don't have that kind of data. I'm sure we could look it up or maybe it's somewhere. So I say as a national movement, this is not a national movement.
Yeah.
It is very much a regional movement. So could we see some sustained like multi-month, multi-year type terrorist campaign in a regional metro area? Oh yeah, of course. Where there is support. Now that support, that's just Americans who sympathize with the plight of Palestine. That does not include. So basically, the the level of support for escalating into violence would be much lower than that. Which is the point. If you have a tiny fraction of the people who support you doing those things, basically we're talking about domestic terror here, then it's not going to last for very long because the public will be turned against you and it will be much harder for you to operate.
Hmm.
And so, all this is to say, this has to be looked at at a regional level. Uh, but in terms of, yeah, I mean, this could last for. It seems to me that the Israeli war in Gaza is the primary driver. At some point, this is going to come to an end, and Israel is just going to occupy the Gaza Strip. And I don't know. I guess part of this probably depends on Netanyahu's leadership horizon, how much longer he's going to be in charge there. Are they going to go on the West Bank next? Talking about trying to bomb Iran back into the Stone Age. So apparently Netanyahu's not done. So, but my point is, if we're looking at potential spikes in the future, some of this stuff is probably going to be driven by what the Israelis are doing in Gaza and the public reaction to that. So I don't remember what your question was, but I did just want to point that out. We're talking about regional campaigns here, not like a national kind of movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That pretty much answers it. Once they start shooting people, or blowing things up or burning things down, the terror phase will kind of fizzle because most people don't like having stuff in their backyards burned down or their neighbors murdered.
I think it will be extremely unpopular. You can look back at the public reaction to domestic terror. Americans do not have an appetite for it. We can go back to like Occupy Wall Street and BLM too, and yeah, Americans don't have an appetite for that type of violence. So if that is something that they start, I do not. I mean, it may be sporadic and it could happen over a long period of time, but this is not going to be like terror attacks every day for like months or years on end.
Okay. That's kind of what I figured, but I figured I'd get the word from you.
Well, they're going to
so,
run. I mean, they're going to run out of people essentially willing to go do that stuff,
yeah,
knowing that they're going to get life sentences for this stuff.
yeah, especially considering that we have an administration that isn't going to turn a blind eye to
Oh,
it.
yeah, they're not going to play any games. They're going to go for maximum sentences and RICO charges. That, and honestly, there's a lot of legal risk for the people in Unity of Fields and some of these other or what is it, students for Palestine, and there's a Students for Justice for Palestine. There's like a bunch of these groups scattered all across the country, but I think there's a huge RICO risk for some of them, frankly.
Especially if there's a paper trail or a communications trail that you can link some of these places together with some donors, or you can figure out how they're communicating with each other, if they are communicating with each other. Yeah, there's a lot that the government has at their disposal that will allow them to kind of dragnet through all of that and figure it out.
Yeah, let me. Well, I don't know how much time you have, but just one thing briefly is there's been a lot of talk about the Trump administration maybe invoking the Insurrection Act, and this is something that Trump himself has brought up in the past. I mean, given enough instability or enough attacks, I think that could come up again. And if you are if you're the Palestine left, this is you want to find one thing that Unity of Fields said. I don't know, probably like 6 or 12 months ago, is basically this whole Palestine stuff is running out of steam. They they don't have a lot of staying power because, in so many words, Americans they just are not supportive by and large of the Palestine cause. And so
Hmm.
they said we have, and this is for an official communique that they put out, and they said we have to rope in other similar causes. And so
Yeah,
one way to do that is, maybe you do attempt to goad the Trump administration into invoking the Insurrection Act, which is going to bring all these other left wing groups off the sidelines. So I'd say that's a risk that is probably not many people are connecting those dots yet, but they will be here, maybe like in the next few months.
yeah. That's why you see this sort of schizophrenic array of people at these protests, where it's like you got the Free Palestine people, and then you got like the LGBTQ people, and if an LGBTQ person went to Palestine, they'd get thrown off a roof, but for some reason it's a left wing cause, so they've got roped into this. And then you've got the environmental people, and you've got just all of these disparate, unconnected, other than just being a left wing movement, are now out there in the streets chanting for free Palestine, and also government subsidized abortions, and gay marriage that we already have, and trans rights. And it's just like, you guys don't have a single unified message at all. You just know that these are the things that the Trump administration doesn't like. So we're going to get out there and chant it in the streets because own the chuds, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That is the point right there. That's the whole point. And I've seen these blogs and these social media accounts talk about this stuff before. Is there is a lot of uh, disagreement and dissension among some of these groups, and they don't see eye to eye. they do not see eye to eye on everything. But the one thing they can agree on is that they dislike the people in charge. So I think if there was to be some kind of uniting banner that brought all these groups together, it would have to be opposition against Trump. And maybe some of these groups they could say, yeah, Trump is our common enemy, and we don't we have competing visions for what we think is just and fair. But what's that Lord of the Rings meme? About, I don't know, I forget what it is. You know what I'm talking about? It's a little dwarf guy and the
Oh,
Legolas.
I never thought I'd die fighting side by side
There
with an
you go.
elf. And it's
Yeah,
like, what about
exactly.
with a friend?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
yeah, yeah. So, uh, looking at some of these protests, I'm going to give the viewers at home a little bit of homework for tonight. If you have ever wondered why you look at any of these left wing protests and everybody looks terminally unfuckable, go ahead and look up something called bio-Leninism. It is a theory that I think bears a lot of weight. It's basically the more undesirable and uglier you are, the more common cause that you will find with far far left ideologies. Bio-Leninism. It's a fun read, and that'll put us at about an hour right now. It really want to say that we appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule. I know you got your hands in a lot of pies, so it's
Yeah,
always a
hey,
pleasure
I got
having
a
you on.
question for Mike too.
Oh
I
yeah,
bought 2 copies of the Area Intelligence Handbook, and I've loaned them out, and they liked it so much I said go ahead and keep them. But they've been sold out forever now. When are you gonna get some more in?
Uh, yeah, I don't know. Some of your, I have like, I think I actually have 4 left because I went back and went through a bunch of boxes. Send me your address. I'll send you one. I'm sure we'll get them printed. They're actually up on Amazon. I just
Well, I
enough people asked, and it's the ebook. The ebooks are up on
yeah,
Amazon now. Yeah.
I want to get
Send
that
me your
paper.
address. I'll send you one of the few remaining copies I have.
All right, I'll get a hold of you after the show then. Also, Max Rocktansky was Mad Max's
yeah.
real name, which
Oh,
coincidentally is
okay.
also BB Netanyahu's given name. So,
Nathan Malkovich.
oh, was it? Oh, okay, I was close.
Yeah, one Polak is just as good as the other, right? Eh,
Well, when do we? So hang on. When do we learn that? Because I went one weekend. It was a long weekend some time ago. I watched all the Mad Max movies like back to back to back to back, and I think I read the Wikipedia, and it was like it actually doesn't call he. I could be completely wrong. Maybe this is like what's the effect called where you remember things that weren't really.
Mandela effect. Since we're talking
Yeah.
about South Africa a
Oh
lot.
yeah, there you go. The Mandela. Maybe it's the Mandela effect. I could have sworn that I read somewhere that in the first film we actually don't know his name, and we don't know anything about him. They just call him the Road Warrior. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't even remember like where we learned his name either, unless that was just like something that was revealed off screen.
It
But
was in the new ones where they reveal his last name.
okay,
Okay.
well, there you go. All right, so like I was saying, we always appreciate Mike taking time out of his busy schedule to come in and sit with us and shoot the shit on a weekend.
Sure, man. I'm
Ben,
super busy on Saturday nights. Happy to be here. I'm not busy at all, or not too busy for y'all. So yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, no problem. If you guys are interested, if you're watching this, if you're new here and Mike brought you in, you can go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. We're on YouTube and Rumble. Go back through our back catalog. We've been trying to get some friends of the show start rotating through to get us all kind of shake things up around here a little bit as we go through the news of Clown World. If you want to support us financially, you can go to Rhodes, the number 2 liberty.com to buy some of our merchandise, or you can go to our affiliate link at thealexjonesstore.com/R2L. All sorts of fun supplements and t-shirts and hats and mugs and knives and coins and stuffed gay frog plushies and all sorts of stuff out there. Good stuff out there, though. Ben, you got anything else?
No, we're not going to have a show next week,
Oh,
but
right.
we will be back the week after.
Mike, you got anything else for us? You want to drop some websites for people to go follow you at?
Yeah, listen, big things are happening, so I just pay attention to forwardobserver.com, and we're getting ready to announce a couple of probably the most important things we've done probably in the past 2 years or so. So it's coming.
Oh, there you
Forwardobserver.com.
go. ForwardObserver.com. So for Mike Shelby from Forward Observer, Ben and myself,
Stay honky.